Has this day not been fantastic? Our participants have been so amazing. The sessions I've been in have been just amazing. So I know we are in for a treat with Madison's presentation. Thank you for your patience. I will give you a really quick introduction to Madison's work. You may be familiar with her. She's a performance poet and advocate from Houston, Texas, currently studying English with a minor in Africa and African diaspora studies at the University of Texas, Austin. Maddie has already made a significant impact in the literary world. In 2021, she became Houston's first Black female youth poet laureate, and her poem, To Be a Black Girl, was published in the New York Times the following year. Selected as a speaker for TedxUTAustin, Maddie tackled the topic of racial equity as a religion, suggesting that the key to racial equity lies in sociological discussion. Her lifelong mission is to promote literacy, Black history, and good mental health practices, fostering awareness and understanding. Maddie's poetry speaks to the resilience, hope, and empowerment of marginalized communities, challenging oppressive systems and acknowledging the often shamed reality of mental health. Through her words, she strives to create a more inclusive future, inspiring others to embrace their identities and narratives. Welcome, Maddie.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here and being so patient. Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited about today's topic. It's very close to my heart. So yeah, whenever you're ready, Cheryl, if you want to share the screen. Right, thank you, Cheryl. And thank you again, everyone, for your patience. Okie dokie. So my name is Madison Petaway, but my stage name is Maddie P, and I am a performance poet. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is just a little bit more about me. I was Houston's 2020 Youth Poet Laureate. Those are a few of the awards that I got. In the top right corner, you'll see that I won a big check from my university. I participated in a talent show and I won first place prize. So that was really awesome because it was like the first poetry act that they had ever seen. And that just goes to show you the impact of poetry, which I think is very, very important. If we could go to the next slide again, please. So this is my mental health journey before we go ahead and jump into our poem for the day. So I have seen 6 therapists, 2 psychiatrists, and 1 psychologist in a span of 8 or 9 years. And I used to be very nervous to say that statement because people are like, what's wrong with you if you've seen that many therapists? And what I have come to realize is that, I'm human, my mental health care team, they're human. And so people won't always click. Part of the problem was also at the beginning of my journey, I was misdiagnosed with major depressive disorder. And a lot of that is just because as a adolescent, mental health care professionals don't really diagnose you with big disorders, or they try not to until you hit 18. So instead of giving me these different diagnoses, they just stuck with depressive disorder. That all changed for me when I entered into my freshman year of college. I had hypomanic episodes, which are a slightly less severe form of manic episodes. So I was in a very high place all the time. And unfortunately, I ended up on academic probation, which has had its drawbacks, of course, but I was able to get off academic probation at my university, and I finally got the help that I need. I was able to get newly diagnosed with my actual diagnoses, and since then, I've started a blog on Instagram called @TheExperiencedClient, which is all about empowering people in their mental health journey if you don't know where to start. And so, yeah, next slide, please. So I thought this was kind of nice to include because what we're going to be talking today here about here today. Our session is called The Voices We Carry. So as you go through life and you have new experiences, your goals, values, everything about you, or not everything, but some things about you are going to change. I just wanted to put like what my goals used to be, you know, before I I guess like really underwent therapy and like really getting to know myself better. So before, I used to want to travel to Europe, publish books, become an astronaut. That didn't work out. So now that I have like gotten in touch with myself, I want to travel to Brazil and Africa. I want to teach writing workshops around the world, publish books, and learn new languages. And you know, so as you can see, like some of my goals have shifted. Some have still stayed the same. I still want to be involved in the literary community. I still want to travel. And if we could go to the next slide, please. So that just leads us to our session of the voices we carry. Just reiterating, you know, as we grow and we learn, some of the like voices and experiences, hopes, dreams that you had from years ago, you might be carrying still with you today. And a lot of people feel like, you know, you have to kind of like leave the past behind and only focus on the present and the future. And today's session is all about combining your past experiences and your present and future experiences, because I think that's very important. So we are going to delve into a format of poetry called two voice poems. Next slide, please. So a two voice poem is a piece where there are two voices, where two voices are engaged in dialogue with each other. And this isn't a format of poetry that I see a lot, but I really love it so much. So it's usually in two columns, and on one side you have one voice and on the other you have another voice. And they're not like their own separate poems. They definitely like bounce off one another. So the voices may speak separately, meaning the voices do not engage in a full discussion, or the voices may share some of the same lines. The voices are opposites of one another. So it's usually like, and one column is a young person versus an adult. You might have a king versus president, royalty versus a civilian, etc. A very awesome example I saw about this was Batman versus the Joker. So the way the piece was, it's like, I am Batman, I am a hero. And then on the other side, it was, I am the Joker, I am a villain. And it was just contrasting those two voices and like how, yes, while they are technically polar opposites, they bounce off one another. So in the piece, like Batman and the Joker were both saying like, I would be nothing without the other person, because a hero needs a villain in order to be a hero, and the villain needs a hero in order to, you know, I guess be a villain. So I am going to lead you guys through an exercise on how to write your own two voice poem. But before I go on, I just wanted to know if anyone had any questions thus far. Are we good? Okay, we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so if you guys could get out your writing utensils and kind of just take a moment, and I want you guys to journal here with me. So we have to choose our two characters for our piece, okay? So I want you guys to kind of like do these little very brief like writing exercises with me, so we can get a feeling of who you are now versus who you were as a child or a teenager. And so let's see, I know because I was late, we're a little short on time. yeah, I will read out the questions and give you guys about like 3-5 minutes maybe. And then we'll move into the line by line, like example of how to format your poem. So this first question that I want you guys to really think about and write down if you so choose is, how would you describe yourself as a child or teenager? This could be very brief. I would describe myself as like playful, curious, like those are the things that come to mind. So how would you describe yourself as a child or a teenager? And again, feel free to write those words down or just keep it in the front of your mind. Second question is, what descriptions of yourself have changed as an adult and which descriptions have stayed the same? So as an adult, I think I still am playful with the right people. I think I'm a little more reserved than I used to be, but descriptions that stayed the same. I am still a very curious person. I still want to learn about the world around me. So that's one of the things that I would write down. And the last thing, I want you to think of an event, good or bad, that influenced your childhood. And again, feel free to write that down or keep it in the forefront of your mind as we continue on. And really think, knowing what you know now about your life, what would you say to your younger self about this event? And again, I'll give you guys about 3 minutes to really think about that and process that, and then we can continue. Oh, can you go back to the last slide? Yes, okay. I'll leave that on the screen for now so they can answer the questions. And again, I set a timer for 3 minutes, so just take your time and write it down. So we have about 1:10 left on the clock for this, but I just wanted to chime in. I know I said you can think about something that influenced your childhood, but you know, really every day, every week, month, year, we are going through challenges. So if you think it would be more influential for you to write about an event that happened recently even, or in your adult life, you can totally think about that in the forefront of your mind and kind of just think, you know, knowing what you know now, how would you respond to yourself who is in that situation? So, you know, maybe like losing a loved one, or just like getting in an argument with someone, you know, like how has your perception of things changed? You can also think about that. So if you are still writing, feel free to keep writing. I do kind of want this to be a little bit interactive. So if you guys feel like it, if you could drop in chat just like a word or two of how would you describe yourself as a child or a teenager, or how would you describe yourself, you know, like, I guess a few years ago in your adulthood, if you wanted to take that route. So if anyone wanted to drop like some of their descriptions in chat. And again, just to let you guys know what I wrote down. I love that, imaginative and a reader. I was too, yes. Just to tell you guys what I wrote down. I wrote playful, curious, talkative, energetic, carefree. That's a good one, yes. I can understand that. Once read Revelations in the Bible for fun. You know, when I was younger, I actually tried to read through the dictionary as a, yeah. I wanted to read through the entire dictionary when I was a kid. I didn't know what rent was. Yeah, I like that. As a college student, having to pay rent as well, I understand. Wanted to be an adult, I cannot wait. Okay, these are all beautiful. I love these, I love these. And so again, For question number 2, how would you guys describe yourselves now? What description has stayed the same and which descriptions have changed? So for me, the descriptions that stayed the same, I am still playful, curious, and I think I'm still just a little bit talkative. I think what's different for me is I'm not as energetic. I'm a lot more lethargic. I no longer want to be an adult. Yeah, that's a good one. Yes, I feel that as well, Juliet. I'm the same way. I still love stories, but I'm also not as imaginative as I used to be. I feel like I used to be more concentrated as a child as well. And I feel like recently I'm a little less focused. Don't read the Bible as much too. Yeah, I also stopped trying to read the dictionary too as I grew up. So anyone else? Okay, very focused on what the future holds. Okay. I like these. Yes, me too. I feel that. I definitely feel that. I like more often than not, I feel like I'm a bit more like pessimistic now than I was as a child. I was a lot more positive, outdoorsy as a child, getting back to that now. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, and number 3, I want you guys to hold on to those events. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, so we are going to take those descriptions and I want you guys, okay, we are going to come up with 2 characters, okay, that you want to write about. And these characters are going to be yourself, but I want you guys to pick like either 2 emotions or descriptions that you used for yourself. So like, if you said you were playful or curious as a child, you might choose that as a character, like the playful child. And then your second character might be like the more serious adult, or something like that. So I want you to choose 2 characteristics, one for you as a child versus one for you as an adult, that are total opposites of one another. So a lot of you guys said, you were more carefree as a child. So your second character would probably be you being the serious adult. So just whichever characteristic speaks to you. So I am probably going to choose the energetic child versus the tired adult. That's going to be my 2 characters. Okay. All right. And I'm just gonna keep going here. So when you have your 2 characters, or if you're still thinking, that's totally okay. I want you to split your paper in half. So either fold it in half or just draw a line down the middle. You want to have 2 columns for this poem. And so once you split that paper in half, and I will use my paper here as like, an example. It's like, just split your paper, or you can just write a line going down the middle, but split your paper in half. And then you want to write the name of your 2 characters at the top of each section. So on the left side, write the name of your character. So again, like that personality trait of you as a child. And then the other section will be the personality trait of you as an adult. So I'm going to show you what that looks like again. So in my left-hand column, I had to think about that. In my left-hand column, that's going to be the energetic child. And in my right-hand column, that's going to be the tired adult. So those are my 2 characters. And you can kind of see it on my paper here, but I wrote the names at the top of each column. Okay. And when you have your characters, what I want you guys to do next is we're going to start with line 1. We're going to walk through this together, okay? So line 1, and you're gonna write each line, you're gonna write each of these lines in both sections, okay? So line 1, I am blank. Have the characters state their name, okay? So again, I'm doing energetic child versus tired adult. You can say like I am, insert your name. Pretty much, you can say that, or if you want to be creative and choose like a nickname or something that you were called when you were younger versus now as an adult, you can do that. Get creative with it. So as a child, right, everyone used to just call me by my full name, Madison. So what I'm doing here is, okay, of course. This shouldn't be too long. So as an energetic child, like everyone called me by my full name, my name was Madison. So, and under the energetic child section, I am Madison. Under tired adult, everyone calls me Maddie now. So I am Maddie. Okay. And again, just showing you my paper, I wrote the line under each column. So line 2, under each column, I want you to say, I am an adjective. So how would each character describe themselves? So again, look back at how you described yourself as a child versus an adult and use those adjectives. So as a child, I am bouncing off the walls. Gotta put that imagery in there. Okay. Then line 3, we are going to write a line in the middle of each column. Or my bad. Yeah, we're gonna write a line in the middle of the paper. So write a sentence both of your characters can relate to. So like, I am human, or I am still curious, or just I am curious. And so I am going to put that I am still seeking knowledge as my characteristic that both me as a child and an adult can relate to. And so again, showing you guys my paper, I have both of my lines on either side. And then even though it's really small, right in the center of the page, line 3 is in the center of both columns because both of our characters are going to say that line, okay? And they're kind of talking to each other there, and they're saying like, I am still the same person. Like, this is a piece of me that has not changed. Go ahead and finish up your thoughts. And then if we could go to the next slide, please. All right, line 4. So describe each character's day-to-day routine. These should be different from each other. So you might start off like, for the child column, you might say, I jump out of bed and I'm eating, or I smell waffles that my mom is making, or something like that. As an adult, it's like, I drag myself out of bed and I have a morning coffee or something like that, you know? You just really want to emphasize those differences in routine. And again, feel free to keep writing, but I'm going to read the next one. Line 5. So again, this is going to be another line that's going to go straight like in the middle of both of your columns. This should be a line describing how the routines are similar. So one thing that I feel like I still do, I think most of us do, is, you know, like when you wake up, you probably still brush your teeth, or maybe you always, ever since childhood, you take a shower in the morning. Maybe you've always eaten waffles for breakfast, or maybe you always turn on your favorite TV show in the morning. So line 5 again is going to go in the middle of your columns, and just how has your routine stayed the same? All right. So mine was, I still crave my morning shows and waffles. I 100% try to watch like a cartoon in the morning, and I eat waffles as a college student, and it's fantastic. Okay, and again, if you're a little bit behind, that's okay, but I'm gonna keep reading. Line 6 through 9. Continue describing each of the characters and their differences. So if you want to choose more adjectives to describe the differences between your characters, or if you want to delve more into their daily routine, or like how they feel about the world around them, or how they interact with others, in lines 6 through 9, you're going to do that. And these can be brief lines, by the way. 2-voice poems are usually really brief, so don't feel pressured to write anything long. Okay, and if you don't get to line 9, you don't have to go all the way to 9. Whatever feels comfortable to you, you can go past that number, you can go under that number, whatever feels right to you. You take your time describing your poem. But when you get to whatever you want your last line to be, how do each of your characters feel about the future? And what I love about this part of a 2-voice poem, right, is that this line is totally up to you, in the sense that they could be the exact same, or they could be totally different. I've read pieces where it's a soldier, like a veteran versus a young soldier. And they obviously feel very, very different about the outcomes of their future. I've seen other 2-voice poems where both of the characters feel the same way. They feel optimistic or hopeful, or they might even feel negative, like things are only going to go downhill. So if the lines are going to be different from one another, put them in their own column. But if they feel the same way about the future, I want you to put it in the center of each column. So if they both feel like, I feel that. Okay, so I just gave you guys that little bit of space to write. If you're still writing, that is okay. Just letting you guys know, this is the end of the poetry format. 2-voice poems are really short, they're really easy, but they definitely have the potential to be so impactful. If there are any questions you guys have, or if you guys wanted to drop any of your favorite lines in the chat, just to share with others and hear what other people said, go ahead and do that. I would love to hear some of the lines you guys wrote, or some of the differing lines of the piece. And yeah, just feel free to share with me.
Thank you, Maddie. That was really a lot of fun. Does anyone have any questions? I kept thinking, I have often described, when you mentioned the differing sides, I immediately thought, I have often thought of myself as part cheerleader, part gargoyle. So I don't know if that fits exactly with the age, but that definitely is something that I'm gonna play around with using your technique here.
Yeah, no, 100%, yeah. The only reason why I use ages for this is because I feel like some people might think a little bit too hard about, you know, like, oh, like, who am I as a person? And so when we think of ourselves in, like, you know, past versus present, I think it's a lot easier to make that distinction of how we've changed. So yeah, but no, 100%, like, if you guys want to take this and just like run with it, I totally recommend it. I love this so much.
Well, while everyone else is thinking about their questions, let me ask you, where do you draw your inspiration from poetry, and especially in healing and in dealing with mental health and well-being?
Definitely from personal experience. A lot of my recent poems and even like these writing workshops, a lot of my inspiration just comes from actually dealing with like mental health issues as well as attending therapy. And so I learn like new skills as I grow and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, how can I implement this into my poetry, these skills that I learned? And so that's kind of what led me to here is that, you know, like I, because of my diagnoses, I am working through trauma therapy. And this is something that I've needed for a long time, but I'm only really just getting into. And so we're talking a lot about my childhood and what's different and what stayed the same. And so I was like, this is the perfect example for that.
Do I have any other questions? Oh, I want to ask all of the questions, but I have more. So do you have advice for people? So this is one technique for dealing with some mental health, journaling, I guess. So the thinking of yourself as a younger person and then as an adult. Are there other techniques that you suggest? I know poetry is not everyone's strong suit, but just language, just trying to think about, you know, putting to words how you're feeling, I imagine is
Yeah, I mean, there are so many forms of writing that are really beneficial outside of poetry. Another thing that I've started doing that I really like is like I've just started writing letters, letters to people I no longer talk to, letters to myself, and I don't have any intention of sending these letters, but I act like, you know, like, well, yeah, knowing that I'll never send these letters takes all the pressure off of me because I can literally say whatever I want. I can put all my feelings out there on the page. And I definitely think letter writing can be a form of poetry. And so I do think that's another like way of writing, like a mix of being creative, um, while also still, you know, like getting those benefits and not having to really think too much about what you're writing. So
yeah, I mean, epistolary novels, you can write a novel, epistolary style, and I've seen lots of poems that are also letters. Do we have any questions in the chat, or does anyone have her hand up? Oh, here we go.
I have one question too. Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Please do.
Oh, Madison, this was awesome. I found myself just really thinking, I was surprised how similar my young self is to my current self. And I was curious about just how, you know, certain things, that certain traits still stay the same. They just show up differently. And when you talked about, was there a line that was inspirational to put in the chat? I was curious about this because I don't write poetry, so this is new for me, but I didn't write it in like these quotable lines, I guess. And I was imagining like, oh, maybe if Madison was turning this, you would have way cooler words to say the things that I'm saying of just like, we're both exhausted from sleep after a busy day for different reasons, but we both really love sleep, my early self and my current self. But I didn't think about it as a quotable line. So I guess I wonder, how do you turn sort of these stories? I kind of wrote them more as a story, I guess, of like, This is
Yeah.
how my young self approached something, and this is how my older self approached something. But
Yeah.
if you're writing it as a story, how do you make the lines like good lines? Does that make sense? Like quotable lines?
Okay, so first of all lines are good lines because you wrote them. So give yourself a pat on the back for that. But the other thing is like, so I realized as I was writing my poem, like I feel like my poetic brain was already like, okay, how can I switch this line? So for beginners in poetry, I 100% think that, you know, like sticking to a baseline of just like telling things like they are. So, you know, like you said that you guys are both tired, but for different reasons. Like I would start there, and then how I would kind of rephrase that is, you know, like you have this format you can play with, right? So what I would say for you is like, you could put I am tired in the middle of each column. So, you know, like that signifies that both of the voices have a similarity. So you could say, I am tired. And then in each of their respective columns, you could say because of blank or because of blank. And so that's what I really like about two voice poems, is that like you kind of have this dialogue going on just based on the placement of where you put your sentences. So it's not even about like, you know, trying to make the language sound better. It's also just playing around with like the format and where you want to put each of your lines. The other thing I would say is like using the old saying of show don't tell. So instead of saying like, one of my characters was the energetic child, but instead of saying like I am energetic, I said I am bouncing off the walls. I spring out of bed. I adore being awake before the sun rises. Like, you know, just like taking a statement and I guess like over exaggerating it, taking it to the extreme. So like for the tired adult, to contrast, it was like, thank you. I roll out of bed, or not roll out of bed, because that means happy. It's like I begrudgingly like remove myself from my bed or something like that. But yeah, there's no pressure. Like when you first start off writing poetry, just go at your own pace, write what feels right to you and the language that feels right to you.
I love that. Thank you so much.
I think we have a hand up. Massey, did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did indeed. Thank you.
Please go
So
ahead.
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. So thank you for that. I'm joining you guys from the UK, mainly due to Idia, who shared generously about the event. But so thank you for this experience. I mean, I love poetry, but I'm also in awe and have a lot of respect. And as I get older, I engage with it less and less. But you prompted me again, so that was really nice. But also what I liked is, in a way, in a very disarming way, you introduce people to poetry through
Mhm.
form.
Mhm.
It kind of, for the first time, makes sense why, you know, our English lit, I went to school in Germany actually, you know, our literature teachers in class were so obsessed with form. It gives you these tools. It's like, previously I never really appreciated, but what I found through your approach is actually you can participate, you can create, you can engage with it through form. You don't even need to call it poetry. And I agree with you, like to Idia's question, like it doesn't have to be beautiful. I mean, sometimes there has to be also place for ugly, or what we feel as ugly and dissociate with. And one last comment. I didn't fully participate in this exercise because I was just too aware and self-conscious. But I wonder if you ever tried to expand that format. You know, in real life, it's not just those two voices in us that we need to reconcile or listen to, but then we also find support for each of the voices from our colleagues, from our friends, neighbors. And then, so there's almost, before you know it, as a whole like divided audience that give you feedback and strengthening and may even provide you with more ammunition and power. And yeah, I just wondered, like, I mean, in a kind of more,
Yeah.
you can expand, I guess. You can add more people to
Yeah.
it. But thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for your comment. And thank you everyone so much for participating. And I really enjoyed seeing everyone's descriptions. I'm really excited. I believe on my speaker profile, I included like some of my social media. So that's also an option. I could also drop my social media in the chat real fast if anyone wanted it, to keep in contact or to ask any questions about the workshop. Let's see. Yeah, let's do that real fast. Hold on, I think I forgot. Okay, so I am dropping my Instagram in the chat. If anyone wants to keep in touch, ask me any poetry questions, my DMs are always open. And yeah, thank you guys so much for attending this workshop.
Thank you so much, Maddie.
No problem. Thank you guys.
Cheryl, you're muted. We can't hear you. I don't know. I can see your lips moving, so I assume you're.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is that better?
There you are. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Maddie. It's been a wonderful workshop. We really appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you so much for PowerPoint help and just being here for support. Thank you.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of the festival, everyone. Thanks for participating.
Bye. Good to see you. Good to hear your voice, Massey.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. See you soon.